Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. How are you doing today? Hope you are having a sunny day. Ready for some new drama from Ask a Lawyer? Let's go to the first one, about OP's son, who is threatening that he's not going to allow OP to see his kids if OP continues to have a relationship with his ex-wife and her child. Listen to the story to find out why, and of course to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My son, 36, got divorced 7 years ago. It was a really messy one. To put it simply, his wife cheated on him. They separated when he found out. Then a few months later, she told him she was pregnant and insisted it was his. The baby is born and they try to make it work again, but fails again after almost a year. And, long story short, she confesses the baby was never his to start. I don't blame him for never wanting to see her again, but I did feel sad for the baby, who I still recognize as one of my legitimate grandkids, by blood or not. The reason being is that I looked after this baby for his entire first year. I was there for all his firsts, and although I know he's not my son's flesh and blood, I also know deep down my son has always regretted leaving this child who he could have been a real father to. My son is married again, and he and his wife have twins, 4 years old. I've gotten a lot of anger in recent years because I still refer to his ex-wife's son as one of my real grandkids. I talk about him like any of my other grandchildren, and I have pictures of him in my house. I see both him and his mom very frequently, as they live in my state, and I invite them to most holidays. Recently, after another small skirmish, my son once again said that I'll never see the twins ever again if I don't cut off all contact with his ex-wife. He says he won't be visiting with his kids if I don't change my feelings. I told him it's my choice to see whoever I want, and he said if that's the case, then I will never see my twin grandchildren ever again. Am I the a-hole for refusing to cut off all contact with his ex-wife and her son, who I still see as one of my grandkids? Whilst I get why OP wants to remain in his son's ex-wife's child's life, OP has to put his own child first. He is OP's son, and he feels betrayed by OP, and rightly so. Yes, OP was in this baby's life for his first year. Yes, I get why OP is attached. But he is not OP's relative. OP's son is. His children are. OP owes them her loyalty. I would strongly advise OP to limit the time she spends with son's ex-wife and her child. And I would even more strongly advise OP not to invite them for holidays. Those invitations very much belong to OP's son and his family. OP does understand that if she keeps refusing to cut off contact, it's going to cost OP 2 of her actual grandchildren, not to mention her son. All for a child who is not related to OP, about whom his mother lied to OP and her son. Doesn't that seem screwed up? Also, this woman hurt OP's son, so I don't understand how she is okay to have a relationship with her. And now let's hear if the community agrees with me on the matter. Cultured Philistine says, "You're the a-hole. Just for the fact you staying in contact with this mother after everything she put your son through. Cheated on him, and then committed paternity fraud. And you treat this woman as a friend? Invite her to your home for holidays? Your loyalties are messed up, big time." Lola the Showgirl says, "I invite them for most holidays. This is where I decided you're the a-hole. You're inviting over the woman who tormented your son into your house for holidays, and this is alienating your son and his actual family. This is so ducked up on so many levels, and I'm shocked he let it get this far. You're being a terrible mother to him, and I actually really hope he cuts you off. It doesn't even sound like you'd care if he did." Immunocompromised L says, "You're the a-hole. If someone hurt my child, I would support and respect my child. You sided with the ex who cheated to satisfy your need for a grandchild. You could have begun limiting contact immediately. It is indeed your choice, but you're creating a painful situation for your son and pushing him out of holidays. He is choosing his mental and emotional health over your feelings, and he is allowed to do that." Rose and I have been married for 7 years, and we have a 4-year-old son. She had an accident last year and can no longer work. Recovery is not easy. I'm struggling to pay all our bills on my own and still pay the medical bills, but I hardly ever talk about it with my wife because I don't want her to feel guilty. I don't use a credit card. I just have one to leave with my wife while I'm at work, and she hardly ever uses it, so I barely look at financial transactions. Just yesterday, I noticed that there were credit card purchases made a week ago. It was an expensive watch, an expensive suit, renting a food truck, spending on decorations and confectionery. My birthday is in 2 days. That was like a kick in the stomach. I called my mom asking if Rose had said anything about having a surprise party. My mom said Rose wants to show her gratitude for everything I've done for her. I said I would refund the card purchases, and my mom said my wife had already sent out the party invites. I almost shouted into my cell phone that those expenses exceed my salary. I got home and told Rose how broke we were, not talking about the party. She turned pale and barely spoke during the conversation. I waited for her to confess about what she did, but she didn't say a word. Before posting this, I texted a friend asking about the party, and he said he would definitely be going, and he thought it was a surprise. This means that despite having told Rose about our financial condition, she did not cancel the invitations. I couldn't take it anymore and said I knew about the party and would cancel all invitations and ask for my money back. Rose told me that it was no longer possible to cancel most of the expenses without paying a fine, and promised me that she would give me my money back when I got back to work. She's begging me not to cancel, but I'd rather pay the fine than pretend I'm happy at a party I didn't plan and that I'll have to suffer to pay for. Would I be the a-hole if I canceled the birthday party? Edit. About my wife not knowing about our financial situation. We reduced our standard of living a lot. We sold our cars. I canceled plans to buy our own house. We moved to a cheaper rental, medical debts. I just avoid arguing about it or venting. I leave my card at home for emergencies. The limit is a little above my monthly salary. But like I said, my wife and I barely use it. Showing her gratitude by spending money them two don't have was thoughtless and inconsiderate. Large and unusual purchases from a shared account should have a discussion beforehand. To make it worse, she won't cancel. The fees would be easier to pay off than the full cost. Does she just not want the embarrassment of canceling? Surely there's a cheaper way if she still wants to throw the party, or a decent excuse she can use to cancel. Saving face isn't worth stressing your spouse out over debt. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Dragon Rose says, not the a-hole. A $100 fine is a lot easier to pay off when you are financially struggling than $1,000. She can still throw a surprise party with a sheet cake and home-cooked food, and it wouldn't cost nearly as much. That was rather inconsiderate of her, considering she isn't currently working. There's only one income, and that was a large expense without consulting the one that would be responsible for it. Grab Thor's Hammer says, not the a-hole. While I do believe you should be communicating the financial status of your family, I don't think it'd be something new to her that there isn't a ton of money just laying around to spend randomly. You're the a-hole, only if this is what you've been portraying and buying luxury items on a whim. These are really big purchases, and even though she may have done this with a good heart, once you guys talked about the fact the family couldn't afford this, her doubling down is a serious issue. A birthday is not worth going into debt for, especially as it seems you're the one that's going to have to figure out how to pay for all this. She needs to swallow her pride and put family first. I, 33 male, and my wife, 31, have 4 kids together. Our oldest is 14, and she has severe eczema that she was born with. She recently started using this soap for her eczema that was prescribed to her by the doctor, and it's over the counter, but I don't remember the brand. And she has a white towel that she can't share with anyone else as directed by her dermatologist. But my cousin was staying with us for the weekend, and she's 32. She has 2 kids that are 13 and 11. But we had spent the day at the park, so you know all the kids are dirty and sweaty, and they all need a shower. Well, my 3 youngest went first, then my cousin's 11-year-old, then the 13-year-old. My oldest goes to get in the shower, and about 3 minutes later, she comes stomping out the back, with her towel, soap, and eczema cream in hand. Turns out, my cousin's kids used her towel, even though we gave them towels to use. Not only that, but they had poured her soap on the towel and into the sink and toilet. And the eczema cream, which has steroids in it, was rubbed into the towel and their skin, and on the mirror and toilet and tub. My daughter is angry, rightfully so, and we're all confused. So we asked all the kids who did it. It wasn't my youngest 3 because they said her stuff was put away in the cabinets like normal, and the actual youngest is 3 years old, who gets bathed by her mother and I. So my cousin's kids confessed to having done it, and my wife and daughter are angry. So their mother was just watching us ask all the kids, and I asked her what she was going to do about them. And she told me they didn't do anything wrong and that they're just kids, and that she doesn't know what I want her to do about it. So I blew up at her and said your kids are 13 and 11, not ducking 3 and 1, and for them to do this is horrendous. Not only that, but I expect you to replace what they destroyed. The steroid cream is about $65, and the soap is about $30, while the towel was only about $10. But she got mad and said that I can't expect a single mother to pull $105 out of her butt like that. I then told her that I didn't care about her being a single mother and told her to take her kids home. And she did leave, albeit angrily. After that, I got a couple of angry texts from her mother saying that the kids didn't do anything wrong and that she shouldn't be expected to replace the stuff because she's a single mother. So am I the a-hole for making them go home? Edit number 1. So I got my money from my cousin and her mother. They split the amount down the middle after multiple threats from my wife and I about small claims court. Their father was made aware of what they did and actually bought a few gifts for my daughter as a way to say sorry. Not only that, but the kids have been forced to apologize over the phone by their father. And they said that whatever money they get goes to her until they reach $105. Even though I tried to tell him no about the payment with the kids, he insisted, saying it was the least he could do. Not only that, but they're no longer allowed in my home and won't be allowed in my home ever again. OP clearly did just about everything right. OP let them in his home, gave them the things they need to shower, and they go waste the soap and cream for no reason. The only thing OP could have done better was to put his daughter's cream, soap, and towel away until they were done in the bathroom. Overall, OP is not in the wrong here. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Free the Welder says, "Wow, not the a-hole. Your cousin is not taking any responsibility for the fact that she raised 2 middle schoolers who ruin other people's property for fun? Keep insisting she replaced the cream and soap. Your poor kid shouldn't have to suffer because she is a crappy parent." Username 52 says, "Not the a-hole. The biggest thing is that your cousin thought there was nothing wrong with her kids going through your cabinets and destroying other people's things. If she apologized, spoke to her kids, made them apologize, etc., and then told you she's struggling and can't afford $100, and you could, that'd be a different situation. But she didn't care at all. You shouldn't trust them in your house again." I've been away on business for all of September and the greater portion of August. My wife, 44, suddenly calls me yesterday and tells me, 44, that she has stage 3 cervical cancer. I don't know that much about cancer, but I do know that you get told you have cancer first, and then a CAT scan tells you how much it has progressed. I demanded to know why she didn't tell me earlier, and she gets extremely snide, and in an exaggerated tone of suffering says, given how little I wanted to be home, she and my 3 grown kids thought if it was an earlier stage, she could have gotten and finished treatment before I even came home. I was furious that once again, she was putting our kids above me in her list of priorities. And worst of all, the fact that her cancer is caused by HPV was a direct implication on my health. When I bring up the fact, she starts crying and shouting, "We haven't kissed in 3 years, so why should I have to tell you first?" Then she starts blaming me and saying the HPV must have come from me and that she was probably going to die from this, and I couldn't handle it anymore. So I told her I didn't need to hear the rest of this and hung up. Am I the a-hole? My buddies at work, who usually say that my wife is being the unreasonable one, are now siding with her, probably because they pity her current health condition. But I'm extremely furious at my wife, and I feel nothing but disgust and rage towards her right now. Disgust at the fact that even in situations that could have severe health implications on me, she chooses to withhold information and cite old grudges. And rage that she continues to blame everything on me when I've not heard about a single case of cancer from my side of the family. When, if she was so afraid of cancer, she should have paid more visits to the OBGYN so they could discover it before it had spread. She continues to choose the kids over me and blames me for being away when she claims to be long-suffering, yet eagerly spends family money on herself and the kids. I will loyally pay her bills for cancer because that's what my parents raised me to do. All the while, apparently, I don't even get the courtesy of advance notice, instead being probably the last person on earth to know. I could have gone to the doctor weeks ago to make sure that there was nothing sneaking up on me health-wise, but she robbed me of that. MarksBro4521 says, "According to your post history, you have a sugar baby and regret your wife and kids. So yeah, definite you're the a-hole. I feel sorry that your wife will have to rely on you during such a tremendously difficult period." Impossible to pronounce says, "Are you seriously blaming your wife for getting cancer? God, it doesn't sound like you care about this woman or your children much at all. You're the a-hole." Edit. To include that you also seem to resent your children because your wife spends money on them and chooses them over you. Aura0505 says, "You're the a-hole. She has cancer, for goodness sakes. Who cares who she told when? She told you. What one usually expects when telling others of their cancer diagnosis is compassion, empathy. I would be asking, how is she doing? What can I do to help? Instead, everything you mentioned above sounds selfish. How about me? Why didn't you tell me? What about my health? My wife, 37 female, and I, 36 male, have just been through 2+ years of emotional, stressful, and ultimately unsuccessful IVF. After our final round 3 months ago, we were told that using her own eggs to get pregnant via IVF isn't a viable option. As soon as we received this news, my wife was immediately on the phone to her younger sister, basically beginning the process of organizing an IVF donor round with her. At the time, I told her that I didn't want to rush in, and that using her sister's donor eggs changed things for me, and I wasn't sure how comfortable I was with it. Prior to this, there had been some brief discussions about her sister potentially being willing to donate her eggs. However, it was never discussed seriously. She essentially brushed off my concerns and immediately started the process. Sister had some of her own eggs frozen first, counseling with all parties, and now the starting of the donor cycle. I made it clear during the counseling session with the IVF people that I wasn't on board yet and was still processing everything. I think I went along with the process at the time because I didn't want to upset my wife, who doesn't receive bad news well at the best of times. At the time, she basically just said, "Well, you have 2 months to get comfortable." Skip forward to a few weeks ago, and suddenly I'm being informed that both her and sister were starting the medication. I was never asked about whether or not I was okay with this. Fight ensued, where I again reiterated the fact that I wasn't actually on board with this. I was again told that there's still time to process before it's all happening. A week later, I build up the courage to have another conversation with her about it. I explained that I'm not comfortable yet and need more time to process everything. Given that her sister has already started the medication, I offered what I thought was a good compromise of, we can create the embryos, but then freeze them to allow me some time. Not heaps. I only mentioned 2 to 3 months. This was met with a tirade of anger and tears and accusations of how selfish I am. She also mentions that, "How can you do this to me? We've already started the medication." This basically ended with me being told, "There's still a week or so left for you to process. Try your best to accept it." I understand that due to biology, we don't have unlimited time. However, I don't think that an extra few months is going to have a big impact. I was fully supportive throughout our previous IVF cycles. However, I feel as though my feelings are being ignored, and she is just bulldozing me over to get what she wants. Although we were given the news 3 months ago, it doesn't feel like I've been involved in the decision at all, and it was already underway back then when she started all of this. Because of that fact, I don't think I've actually been able to process anything. I've started to notice that whenever my wife doesn't get her way, it often results in my opinions being ignored, disproportionately big arguments, and eventually me getting bulldozed. This is making me question if she has ever really cared about my feelings or opinions at all. It seems crazy to me that when the person you supposedly love raises concerns and offers sensible compromise, it can just be ignored like this. Tarlac says, "Stop with the yet. You are not comfortable. Full stop. If you were going to get comfortable, it would have been easy. Stand up for yourself and tell her no or yes. You know that no will be hell. So that's why you are pulling the yet BS. Stop kicking the can down the road and deal with the fact your wife wants a baby at any cost. You get on board or get off the train. But it sounds like you will be jumping from a moving train, and that is going to suck." TK20 says, "I think the big issue here is that you aren't, and haven't been, communicating your feelings well. Even in your post, you're saying you want time to process. But to process what? Big picture, a few months really isn't that much time, and you've already had 2+ years to consider what would happen if IVF doesn't work out. So if you're really being honest with yourself, what is the issue, and how do you deal with it? Telling your wife that you need time, and then you'll be on board is basically saying that you're okay with this. You will be okay with this. In my opinion, you should see a counselor for yourself. Hash out what you want, and then bring your wife so that you can have a productive conversation as a couple.